Welcome to the channel. In this video I'm going to be doing a review of the Anycubic Kobra Neo. This is my first Anycubic printer. I've heard great things about the Kobra line, so when I had the opportunity to pick one of these up super cheap, I jumped on it because I wanted to give them a try. And the printer, it's a basic beginner printer. It's comparable to the Go. The Neo and the Go are basically the same printers. There's a couple of minor things, like the Go has a Bowden setup. This one has a direct drive, which is nice. The Go is more a kit, whereas this one, the Neo, is more of a got to put a few things together. The actual build of it wasn't bad. There's hooking the gantry to the base, and then a couple of pieces. You can see how it comes here. These are the various pieces you had to put together. So it wasn't really that bad. It did take a little bit of time, and they made a couple of weird choices about what you had to put together. So I'm not 100% sure on that. But anyway, it's a nice printer, especially for a beginner printer. It has a direct drive on it, which is really nice. It has auto bed leveling on it, which is really nice. It comes with a magnetic removable PEI sheet, again, which is really nice. It doesn't have a filament sensor, but you can buy one. It is an option for it. But anyway, if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. Especially hit that like button. It really helps me out. Here's your tech specs for it. You can see that it doesn't have a high temperature nozzle, so you're not going to print anything exotic on here. But let's go ahead and jump on into the actual review. This is a look at the main board of the printer. Now, this printer doesn't come with dual Z's, but there is an open slot, I think it's labeled E1, that you could use for dual Z's. It actually has a Huada semiconductor HC32F460 microcontroller. I mean, it looks like a standard board. I'm not really seeing anything wrong here. There are some ferrules, that's always nice to see. Speaking of dual Z's, here's a look at the back of the printer. You can see here it's only a single Z-axis. This is your Y motor. They've done a really good job of the wire management. Everything's pretty tidy. You didn't really have to do anything. I mean, the whole overall design of the printer is very clean. At least in my opinion, it's very clean. Moving around to the front, here's a good overall view of the printer itself. I really like the design of this. The aesthetics of it are great. It has a nice overall look, and again, that it's just very clean. There's not a whole lot of extra. All of the angles are just nice. They're engineers, designers. Again, I think they did a fantastic job as far as the aesthetics of this printer go. Here's a look at the bed. It's a nice removable PEI sheet. It has a really nice strong magnet, so you don't have to worry about it popping off while it's printing. It doesn't have any locators on the back, so it's kind of a pain to get it to sit right where it needs to sit. But it's always nice when they give you one of these versus the glass beds. Let me know in the comments if you like glass better than you like the PEI sheets. So here's a look at the tensioners. This is for your Y-axis. It's a nice turnstile tensioner. Here's the one for your X-axis. It's really great when they put these on printers nowadays, and you kind of expect them, to be honest. Now the bed, it does not have any adjustment. It has hard spacers, as you can see here. And that's, okay, because it does have automatic bed leveling, with a inductive probe. But I always like having knobs so that you can actually adjust, because, I mean, honestly, are the beds ever fully level? Okay, so here's a look at the Z end stop. It's an optical, and here's the tab for it that closes the circuit. I'm not sure why they include Z end stops on probe, enabled devices. You don't really need it, but they do include it, and they use it, so you're not using your probe to find your bed. But here's the actual cover that is for the end stop on the X-axis. And what's weird is that this, for whatever reason, wasn't on the printer. You actually had to put all of this together up here. which I'm not really sure why they decided to do that, but it wasn't that bad. It was just an extra step you had to do. Okay, so here's a better look at the hot end. It's a direct drive, and there are 2 screws around the back here that remove this cover. You just pop those off, and there's 2 little tabs you press in, and it just slides forward. And this gives you a better view of everything that's internal to it. Now here is your parts cooling fan. It's a nice 4010. It has some weird fins underneath here. I'm not 100% sure what those fins are for. But here's your stepper motor. And then over here is the actual fan for your hot end. And this is the tab for your direct drive. So here's a better view of the hot end. It's a standard MK6, I do believe. And here's a look at the probe. It's very interesting because they actually give you a tool to set the proper height for the probe. I've never seen a company do that before, so kudos to Anycubic on that. Okay, so before we get into actual prints, I wanted to go over the actual firmware on here. And you know, the overall printer is fantastic. The firmware is horrible. This is by far the worst firmware that I have seen from a company, especially for a printer labeled as a beginner printer. This firmware, you know, at first glance, it looks like a standard Marlin build, and it is. It's just so incredibly lacking in functionality. Now, here's the version, and as of the time of filming here, this is the latest version that they have. But again, the firmware itself is just so cut. You know, there's just so much you can't do. Like for instance, for leveling, if I do auto leveling, it wipes out my Z offset. And if I do Z offset, the printer head doesn't move. So I'm just basically guessing as to where I want this to be. Now, I can manually manipulate, you know, go to the axis and then move and then get it close to the bed and do all of that stuff. But there's just no way for me to, you know, normally when you want to set your Z offset, it'll move to the center of the bed, move down, and then you can baby step it up and down to actually figure out where it needs to be. None of that exists. Your load and unload filaments are going to set the temperature to 230 degrees. Why they set it to 230 degrees, I don't know. Why don't not ask you what you want it to be. Now I can come in here and I can set, you know, my nozzle and I can set my bed, but again, if you go to load and unload, it's going to go to 230. Not sure why they do that, but they do. Moving axis, you know, standard stuff in here, but if you notice, there's no E. I can't move the extruder manually at all, so I can't sidestep the unload and load cycles. Horrible, just horrible. Okay, so they don't really give you a whole lot on the SD card to print. There's really only 2 models on there, and one of them is a tool to set the height for the probe versus the nozzle. Anyway, this is the other one. It's an owl. So let's see how it turns out. All right, let's see here. It's weird because they moved the model all the way through the back for some reason. Get this brim off of here. Again, this one was pre-sliced. I mean, it looks pretty good. You can see a couple little messes around this ear. See if that comes off. I mean, all in all though, it looks pretty good. I like this filament for these little models. Yeah, I'd say this turned out pretty good. Look at the back. Nice and smooth. Couple little blips here and there. All in all, I'd say this is a great model. Let's try slicing something. Okay, so we're in Cura, and I have a Boron Cube that's loaded. Now, they don't give you their version of Cura or anything like that, which is actually really nice. What they do give you is a profile that you can load in that has all of their settings and whatnot ready to go for Cura. So I've loaded that at this point. I haven't changed anything at all. It just loaded their profile and then loaded up this Boron Cube. And I've sliced it. You can see here's the preview for it. And we'll go ahead and we'll print it. We'll see how, you know, this actually turns out using their profile. Okay, so this is actually printing the Boron Cube. Okay, so let's see how this turned out. I'm not sure why they have the brim turned on by default, but cube doesn't look too bad. Now this cube is actually using the provided filament that they gave me, and you know that stuff is generally trash anyway, but I figured I'd go ahead and use it. Guess I needed to purge a little bit more there. You can kind of see the old purple. It doesn't look that bad. Good and flat, but I mean you can kind of see the layer lines here. It's not that bad, but not that great either. Moving on. Okay, so I wanted to try something a little bit different this time. And you know, I'm still using the provided profile that they gave, but I wanted to see how non-supported structures would go. And if you look at this frog here, you can see under his knees, I'm not sure if you can see it very well in the video, but under his knees you can see how they're red. So it's kind of telling you you might want to put some supports there. But I wanted to try it, you know, just to see how well it's actually going to do without supports. So we'll slice her up and we'll give her a go, see how it turns out. And this is the actual frog printing. All right, let's see how Mr. Frog turned out. Yeah, he looks okay. Yeah. I turned the brim off for this one. I left everything else the same though. He looks really good. And you can see the knees actually turned out okay. This one's not perfect, but I mean, again, for no support, I think that actually worked out really well. All in all, I'm happy with Mr. Frog here. Okay, for my last print, I wanted to try something a bit more complicated. So here's Yoshi, which is a nice little model to print, but as you can see, he needs lots of support. So I'm actually going to turn on tree supports and we will see how well they actually work with their profile. Again, I haven't really modified this thing at all. other than turning off the brim they had set. So let's turn supports on, set it to tree, and then let's slice this guy. Probably going to be covered in tree spores. Let's go to preview. Yeah. He's covered in tree supports. But again, this is a good test to see how well they have their supports set, or even if they have their supports set in their default profile. So let me go ahead and save that, and we will print him up and see how he looks. And this is the actual print of Yoshi. Okay, let's see how Yoshi turned out here. Lots of tree supports. And they are on there. I mean, they turned out good. They all formed like they were supposed to. But man, they are on here. They are really on here. Alright, well, almost done. Get this off of there. And there we go. And as you can see, the supports are really welded on. So you're definitely going to have to do some adjustment to get your supports to work properly. Or at least to where you can pull them off without it causing scars. Because you can tell there's, well, that's actually a little bit of a support still there. Pull that off. But I mean, all in all, he doesn't look bad. Just where the supports were looks bad. And you could probably tune that out. But I just wanted to test to see if the default profile worked well. And it doesn't really. Okay, so final thoughts on the Anycubic Kobra Neo. I mean, hardware-wise, price-wise, I think it's a great deal. Especially for what you get. I think it's a great deal. As you can see, through our test models here, it's printed pretty good. With taking Yoshi aside, because those are supports, and you got to get your filament tuned correctly, get your E-steps tuned correctly. Probably once you do all those things, that issue might go away. Might not. You might have to do other things. I don't know. You'll have to spend some time tuning it. Anyway. All of that's doable, all of that's to be expected. The problem I have with this printer is its firmware. And its firmware is so incredibly bad. Why they took away base functionality, I have no idea. Why can't I move the extruder? Why can't you just center the print head when I'm going to do Z offset? Why do you wipe out the Z offset when I auto level the bed? These are questions that I just can't answer. It baffles me that they actually did some of these things. Why? Really, why? Why would you do that? So, just taking the firmware in mind and taking the fact that this is labeled as a beginner printer, it's marketed for beginners. These simple things that you cannot do with it are going to make it so incredibly difficult and frustrating for someone who's new to this. It's frustrating to me, and I've been doing this a while. So for that reason, I can't really recommend this printer. Now, you know, if you were to get better firmware for it, yes, I would definitely recommend it. But as it sits today, I can't. So if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. And as always, happy printing.